Now, you're all familiar with this, how Republicans have been purging people off the voting rolls. For example, Greg Palast found that in the before the 2018 election, when the current governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, was Secretary of State, he purged about 500,000 people off the voting rolls, and Greg Palast was able to demonstrate that over 300,000 of those people should not have been purged. They had never moved. They just mostly happened to be black people living in democratically voted districts. But so anyhow, I documented that last week, and we talked about it. But those kind of things, and this is happening in red states all over the country, where they're just purging people like, left and right like crazy, particularly people who live in big cities. But that does produce some blowback. People get seriously pissed off when they show up at the polls and are told that the Republican administration of their state has removed them from the voting rolls. Now, at that point, it's too late to do anything about it other than fill out a placebo ballot, a provisional ballot. And that's kind of part two of this story. Provisional ballots are they're counted a little more than half of the time, but a lot of the time they're simply not counted, and it varies from state to state. So bottom line, and provisional ballots came about as a result of the Help America Vote Act of 2002. Bob Ney essentially invented them. Bob, who's been a guest on this program many times, a Republican congressman from Ohio. And it was a good faith effort to make it easier for people to vote. But here's the thing: your provisional ballot doesn't get counted unless you show up at the Secretary of State's office and prove that you are who you are, even though you already did that the first time you registered to vote. You've got to do it all over again if you get purged, or in the case of Texas, they've come up with this whole new scheme. I think you could call it passive-aggressive voter suppression. Instead of showing up and being told that you've been purged from the list, which, like I said, just pisses people off, you show up and you're told that you've been put on the suspension list, or they call it the suspense list, and you're given a provisional ballot. The problem, of course, is that provisional ballots are often not counted, and your provisional ballot won't be counted unless you drive to the Secretary of State's office, which could be 100 miles from you, and present the ID that you originally registered to vote with and prove that you're residents and all that kind of stuff. Most people don't do that. Many people don't even know that they have to do that. Now, here's the kicker. Keep in mind, in Texas, most statewide elections are won by Republicans with a 1, 2, at the most 3 or 4% voter margin. 12%, according to the Dallas Morning News, 12% of the entire Texas voter, 12% of all registered voters in Texas are currently on the suspension list. Let that sink in. 12%. Now, if they could just, make it so that most of those people on that suspension list are black or Hispanic or live in big cities, and, we don't know because they don't publish the list, but I would be willing to bet money that that's the case, then this is how Republicans maintain power in Texas. Just put 12% of the voters on a list where their vote only gets counted if, after they cast their placebo ballot, their provisional ballot, they take a day off work and drive within 6 days after the election. Take a day off work and drive to the Secretary of State's office and prove that they are who they said they were and who they already proved they were when they first registered to vote. I mean, this is just insane. If you own a gun in Texas and the state wants to take away your gun, they have to go to court. They have to prove that they have good reason to go to your house and take away your gun. But if they want to take away your vote, if they want to put you on the suspense list or purge you altogether from the voting rolls, they don't even have to tell you. It's just because you have a right to a gun, but you don't have a right to a vote. And this, by the way, these rules were established by 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court. In the Shelby County decision, I believe it was in 2012, where they basically gutted the Voting Rights Act. And of course, in the recent gun control gun liberation decisions by these now 6 Republicans on the Supreme Court, in which they have established that you have a right to own a gun and you can carry it anywhere you want, and quack, 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 quack. So nearly 12% of Texas's roughly 18 million voters are on the suspension list. This is how these guys expect to win an election.